South Africans take to the streets to protest against undocumented foreign nationals. Roxanna Naidoo, a director of global strategy at Latita Africa Tax Advisory, says foreign nationals who are lawfully in the country should not panic but must ensure they have a complete and defensible paper trail, particularly if their visa, waiver or appeal applications are still pending. She also warns employers to view the current climate as a compliance wake-up call, with the Department of Home Affairs having published the draft revised white paper on citizenship, immigration and refugee protection. Naidoo says the direction is clear: tighter regulation, greater scrutiny and less tolerance for non-compliance, making professional guidance increasingly essential. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by Roxanna Naidoo, a director of global strategy at Latita Africa Tax Advisory. Now, you've said that people who are lawfully in South Africa should ensure that they have a complete and defensible paper trail. What exactly does that entail?
Correct. So when I speak about a defensible paper trail, I mean the documents that can tell the whole story without you having to explain yourself under pressure. And that's where we're at right now. We are under pressure. So for a foreign national, that means keeping a valid passport, your current visas or work permits, proof of any of the renewal applications that you have, or if you have a waiver application, and if you have any appeal documents or VFF receipts or home affairs acknowledgements. All of these, you need to have copies of all of this correspondence from the Department of Home Affairs. So it should also include your proof of address, where you're currently staying, your employment records, where they are absolutely relevant, and a clear timeline showing when the person entered South Africa and when the visa was issued, as well as when it expired and what's the next steps that were taken after that expiry. I think, Lulu, the key point is that it's not enough to say my application is pending. You need to be able to prove it very quickly and clearly in writing.
So how can people then protect themselves if, they are stopped by law enforcement while their applications are still pending, and say they don't have some of that documentation on them? What happens then?
That's a good question. I think I've had an influx of calls and inquiries from my clients recently due to the panic that's happening at the moment. And the first thing I say is not to panic and don't argue in the moment. I would advise people to remain calm, ask which department the official represents, and then produce their documents. So if an application is pending, for example, they should have certified copies of the digital copies of the current or previous visas. All the information that I had just mentioned now, they need to have copies on them. If they are employed, they should also have an employer letter confirming their position and that employer is aware of the pending process. The practical protection is preparation around all of this. So if you are only trying to find your documents after you've been stopped, you're already on the back foot right now.
How common is it for lawful migrants to experience difficulties because of delays in visa renewals, waiver applications, or appeals?
It is very common in practice, actually, especially where people submitted applications timelessly, but they're still now waiting for an outcome. So many lawful foreign nationals are not trying to evade the system. They are just stuck in the system. And then the difficulty is that a pending application doesn't always speak for itself when someone's questioned. And that's where we sit right now. That's why the paper trail matters so much. And that's why I'm an advocate for holding on to those necessary documents and having copies of that. A person may have taken the correct steps, but if they can't prove it, they may still face unnecessary difficulties with employers, with the banks, with landlords, and enforcement officials, as we're seeing it right now.
Roxana, how long does it generally take to, whether it's an appeals process, whether it's a waiver application, and visa renewals? With some embassies or high commissioners, uh, it takes a couple of days or even a week. But how long does it generally take, especially when it comes to South Africa's Home Affairs?
You're absolutely correct. It could take days up to weeks. We have some clients still waiting months, depending on the foreign authorities as well, and depending again on what they're able to prove and submit to government when they're requesting these visas and work permits in South Africa. Hence why I say having these temporary papers that you're able to then, give to any official that requested is going to be in your favor.
Now, you described this moment as a compliance warning for employers. What should businesses be doing right now to ensure that they are fully compliant?
I think employers should not wait for an inspection to happen before they check their files. They should be auditing every foreign national employee record now. They should have been, and if they haven't, now is the time to do it. That means checking whether the employees has a valid visa, whether that visa authorizes that specific type of employment, and whether it authorizes that employment with that specific employer as well, and also whether the person is actually working in the role or capacity that's actually allowed by that visa. So it's not enough to just say, I have a copy of a passport in a file somewhere. Employees need to keep the visa expiry register, that they need to diarize their renewal dates early, they need to record pending applications, and they need to make sure that, your HR and your payroll and your line managers all align with this as well. So unfortunately, for employees, immigration compliance is not just an HR issue. It will soon become a business risk as well.
Roxana, we have run out of time, but I have to ask very quickly in about 15 seconds. The Department of Home Affairs publishing the draft revised white paper on citizenship, immigration and refugee protection. What are the most significant changes being proposed for employers?
I think a quick answer to that is that the most important direction that South Africa is traveling in right now is towards a more controlled, a more skills focused, and a more digitally managed immigration system. That is the warning that we have for immigration right now.
That's Roxanna Naidoo, Director of Global Strategy at Latita Africa Tax Advisory, joining us on the line.
That podcast was courtesy of Channel Africa, the African perspective.